Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Takeoff Podcast. I'm your host, Jake Mills, and I'm fired up to be with you today. And today, a very special guest. We have with us Coach Bill Mosiello from TCU out in Fort Worth, Texas. And Coach, how you doing?
Doing great. Thanks, buddy. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm fired up to have you today. And it's funny, when we think about just our past crossing at ABCA and getting to be around you and really looking up to the teams that you've put together, but also just your story and the way that it's all come together with you. I'm fired up to have you today and to get this story out there. But before we get going, Coach, are you ready to take off with us?
I'm ready to take off with
you. All right, so we're going to get right into this. And the first thing I want you to do, Coach, is just give our audience a background just about your journey through baseball thus far.
Well, we did. How much time do we got, Jake? This is a 35-year journey with a lot of ups and downs and tribulations and successes, but it's been an amazing blessing. And I always say this, and it's just a crazy deal for me. Is like, if I had it to do over, I would change everything, but I actually wouldn't change a thing because of all the amazing kids and players that I got to coach and be around, and the other coaches that got to teach me things and mentor me and learn from, and all the different families that I got to cross paths with through my career. So even when the situation didn't work exactly how I wanted it to, how could you replace that? Like, I still met incredible people, and the only thing, experience is about failing, you know what I mean, and growing from it and trying to get better every day and trying to evolve. And sometimes when I talk about my past, like, it's a little embarrassing because of some of the things, and I can't believe some of the things I had done as a young coach and maybe my thought process. And just, it's part of evolving. And so it's like, it becomes embarrassing at times, although it's pretty neat. And what really keeps me going at the end of the day is, so say I've met, guys I coached in the 90s and, even early 90s, and you're thinking, gosh, I wish I had done that different, and how much they still appreciate me and the things they've said to me and the letters I receive. And I'm telling them, hey, trust me, I've changed, and man, I would do it all over again. And they're trying to tell me, hey, buddy, I didn't want you to change. And I'm like, well, I needed to change. Even you were I coached so many amazing kids that they thought it was okay. But as you get older, it wasn't okay. Some of the ways you treated them, and it was never a moral deal or things, but it was just pushing them. But there's some things like, boy, I crossed the line, man. Thank goodness you were accepted it, and, it didn't turn me in, but boy, that wasn't right.
Yeah.
So you learn from that. So, but that kept me going through the years. Some of the kids that I thought, boy, I really need to apologize to him. And I did, but they would tell me, no, I loved it. I grew so much. And then as you get older, I got so many fathers out there of kids that I coach that are coaching now their own sons, and they're saying, hey, I use exactly what you did on my 95 Ole Miss team. And I'm like, seriously, you know how much I've grown since those days and what we've done and how we've evolved. But so you appreciate that. And you must have left some type of implant, but I wanted it to be perfect. Just like I want my players to be perfect, I want to be perfect. And I'm so far from being perfect, it's absolutely scary. And so that's what makes me evolve. And so it started as a kid growing up, I had only one thought in my mind. I was going to be a Major League Baseball player. All I cared about was sports. I would have loved to play in the NBA or play in the NFL, but I knew I just wasn't going to have the skill set to do that. Mm-hmm. And Major League Baseball is a place for average type athletes to excel because there's so much involved in it. You can't excel in the NBA as an average athlete. You can't play in the NFL as an average athlete, but you can play in Major League Baseball as an average athlete with some incredible intangibles, and you better have some awesome skills in some certain ways. So, I was going to take Johnny Bench's. Cincinnati Reds were my team, and I had it planned. Johnny Bench, I know when I grew up, and I knew at a certain age, and he'd be 38 to 40 at this age, and I'd be 21, and I'd be able to take his job with the Cincinnati Reds. And boy, what a joke that was, So I never once thought about coaching, and all I ever wanted to do was to be a player. So when I had I had 3 knee surgeries, like within a 16 or 18 month span, my sophomore and junior year, redshirt sophomore and junior year of college. And I wasn't even able to play my senior year as a collegiate baseball player at Fresno State, and that was crushing to me. And because of the injuries, and was really frustrating. And I had those 2 summers, my sophomore and junior year, I'd actually started coaching Connie Mack baseball when I'd have my knee surgeries, like right after a regional or right after a state championship game. In June, have my knee surgery, so I couldn't go out and play summer ball, but I could coach. So George Horton, one of the greatest mentors a man could have, got me a coaching job with a Connie Mack team. It was sort of a feeder system for Cerritos College, where Coach Horton had coached at the time. And I started coaching that, and we had amazing success. We went to 2 Connie Mack World Series in my 2 years, and we actually won the national championship in Farmington, New Mexico, the second year. We lost the first year, and then the second year we won the national championship. We'd actually beat Midland, Ohio, which is still a staple today. We beat them in the national championship game. Ken Griffey Jr. was a 16-year-old superstar that you knew was going to be the first pick in the draft. He was a younger junior that summer, who went on to be the first pick in the next year's draft. So I was just fortunate to coach some really great players at such a young age. So I thought this was a real easy deal. I thought if you just got them to compete their butts off, that you were automatically going to win because of the players I had. And as I found out, it wasn't that easy. But I got off to a really good start because I was coaching players that were, I was 19 and 20, or maybe even 21 after the next summer. And the players were 18 years old. And if you turned 19 after August 1st, you could still play. So I was coaching guys a year or 2 years younger than me that were fantastic players. But I just thought, hey, this coaching stuff's easy, man. Get them to compete and you can win. And it was, so what an eye-opening experience I had coaching those couple years. And actually, Dave Serrano on the team that didn't win the national championship, our first Connie Mack summer, Dave Serrano was actually my pitching coach. So he was with me. So we were teammates together at that time. So we were coaching together as 19-year-olds. So we were thinking we're going to figure this thing out and we're going to do some special things. But I still hadn't thought about being a coach. I just coached in the summers. I wanted to be a major league player. But as the knee surgeries kept happening, and the fact that I wasn't good enough anyways, I wasn't good enough to become a first baseman because I didn't hit enough to actually transition to another position. I needed to be a catcher to give myself the best chance to even play at a collegiate level. So what an amazing deal that was. And then, so what happened was stopped playing at Fresno State after my redshirt junior year and had a full-time coaching job with George Horton at Cerritos College immediately in 1987. So I started coaching with Coach Horton in 1987. And I split time at a high school that year too, when my brother was playing, and we were able to win at Cerritos College. We won the state championship that year, going 46-5. So I'd coached at Cerritos from 87, 88, 89, and then 90. And we won 2 state titles, in those 4 years. And in California, especially in those days, it was an incredible coaching grounds, and the players were so good. And each school could decide how many games you played. And we played 75 fall games, which was amazing. And we'd play 75 in the fall. Then you had your, 45 to 51 game season during the season, depending if you played in the state championships or not. And then I would go manage in the Alaska leagues and then the Cape Cod leagues, from that span. So I was coaching 75 in the fall, 50 in the regular season, and then another 47, depending on if you played in the finals in the Alaska League or the Cape Cod League. So I was coaching. So what are we talking? 160 games a year then? You know what I mean? So that's what I did, and that's what I loved, and that's where I got to grow, and I got to be the managers in every summer. So that's where I was the head coach, and that's what I always wanted to be, was the head coach. And I'm in a complete charge, and all the things I'm learning at Cerritos, we're using that same system, and we're doing those same things. And I was growing and making tons of mistakes as a coach. And so I was growing as a coach all the time. And I was, like I said, making mistakes as a third base coach, and, just not doing as good a job as I wanted to. But we were winning a lot. So I thought I was doing a pretty good job, but I really probably wasn't. And I was, handling players with such a tough edge, and it was my way or the highway. And I didn't, I hadn't grown yet. I still always had loved my players, but it was one of those deals where if you played your tail off and did what I told you, I loved you, and you probably liked me a little bit. But it was the guys that didn't buy into everything that were probably going, this guy's the worst coach I've ever had. I mean, this guy's too tough on me. He wants perfection. And that's where I've really grown as a coach. But man, I had no we're going to win every single game. I don't care if it's a summer league. We're going to prepare just like I would at Cal State Fullerton, in 91, 92, or Cerritos College. And it was those players that played for me, boy, they were amazing kids. But, today the stories they give, they're all true. They may add a little bit to them, but I'm like, whatever you say, I'm sure was pretty much close to being true. And so I was a hard charging guy, man. And I still am today, but I've evolved. So coached at Cerritos College, and then Augie Garrido had left Cal State Fullerton to go to the University of Illinois, where he actually won a Big Ten championship. People don't really realize what he'd actually done there. And he'd come back to coach. He'd come back to coach at Cal State Fullerton, and he hired George Horton and myself. So we ended up leaving Cerritos College right before the season started. It happened like in August, and we went over to Cal State Fullerton with Augie Garrido. I'd already known how awesome of a coach was. I was a package deal with George Horton. Wherever Coach Horton was, he wanted to take me with him, and so that was absolutely amazing. So I went over there with Coach Horton to be under Augie Garrido, and we won a Big West championship the first year, and then the second year we played for a national championship at Cal State Fullerton. So what an amazing ride. And we lost to Pepperdine 3-2. And the ironic thing about that was I had like 6 players on the Pepperdine team that I'd either coached, one at Cerritos, and the other guys I'd managed in the summer leagues. So I always hated playing against my players, because to me, like once you played for me, you're my guy. So that was a really horrible deal, coaching against guys for a national championship that were your players, but if somebody was going to, if we weren't going to win it, I sure would like my former players to win it. So my last year at Fullerton was 92, where we lost the national championship game to Pepperdine and Andy Lopez 3-2. And then right after that year, they had decided to have this thing called a restricted earnings position. And what that was they limited the third coach to make only $12,000 from the university and up to $4,000 working camps. So, man, that was going to be tough. And although it wasn't, I didn't have a family. I could have worked for free. And I'm not even sure what I made at Cal State Fullerton. But that situation happened. And so they were going to have what they called a volunteer coach. Or actually, I was never the volunteer. It was called restricted earnings coach. So that's what the third coach had to be called, the restricted earnings. And that meant we what you can earn. I ended up going to the University of Tennessee in 1993. I had opportunities. I was so blessed to go to the University of Miami, University of Texas as that restricted earnings coach. Mike Gillespie was at USC at the time. Coach Gus, I'm sure, was at Texas at the time. And I ended up choosing the University of Tennessee. And boy, what an amazing deal that was. And part of the reason I wanted to get to the SEC was we had played in 92, we'd played LSU in a regional. When we beat LSU, beat them up a little bit, like 11-0. And we knocked them out so early that we didn't play them in the finals, thank goodness. But it was in front of whatever it was, 7,000 to 11,000 fans. And the people were telling me, like, this is what the SEC is everywhere. And I was like, really, man, I want a piece of this, man. In the West Coast, there wasn't those kind of fans. And even Cal State Fullerton, which does a great job with fans now, they weren't doing it in 1992. So I wanted to be a part of the SEC. And Rod Delmonico was just starting a program that he'd been there for about 4 or 5 years. And they hadn't made it to a regional yet, but he had it going. He was recruiting great players. And Larry Simcox, a great friend of mine who did a fantastic job, was there. He was recruiting at a high level and doing a great job. So I got to come over to University of Tennessee, and we had the most amazing 2-year run. We won, I think, 98 games, 53-45 in those 2 years. And it was because we had Todd Helton, and that's the main reason, and Bubba Trammell, and a great bunch of some junior college kids from Florida. And we just played great defense, and we pitched at a pretty good level and ran the bases really well. And we competed like mad. And so we lost that year to University of Kansas we hosted a regional, and University of Kansas beat us and went to a World Series. So going to that 94 year, we had the whole club back, and we were going to add R.A. Dickey, a freshman that we'd recruited from NBA in Nashville. So we had a whole group back, and we went on to win the SEC title the next year again. And we went, I think it was 25-4, which at the time was a record. And I don't know if it's been broken now, but we went 25-4. And we won like 18 straight games at one time, 13 SEC games, and R.A. Dickey ended up winning 15 games that year. So what an awesome pitcher he was, and he was. We had a great pitching staff and some great competitors, and what was really crazy in those days is when I left Cal State Fullerton, I was the hitting coach, third base coach, but we got Augie Garrido and George Horton. So I wasn't doing a ton, but learning and listening and building relationships with players. But when I went to University of Tennessee, my job was going to be the pitching coach. And I'd never been a pitching coach before, but being a catcher, I believed in watching Coach Horton and the great Wally Kincaid from Cerritos College. And I knew that, you know what, I think I can handle a pitching staff. I'm whatever age I am, 24 or whatever, but I got enough. I'm arrogant to think I can do that. So I did the pitching, but I also had told Roger Monaco, I'll do the pitching, but I want to be able to coach third base. And I think he was a little bit like, well, you know, how are you going to coach third? You have the pitching. I said, pitching will be my priority. But if I can show you that I know what's going on, will you let me be the third base coach? And somehow I won him over in the fall of the 93 and fall of 92, which turned into 93 baseball season. And he let me be the pitching coach and coach third base. Larry Simcox did a fantastic job with the infielders, and he did with the hitters. And I did a lot of night stuff with the hitters, and we'd hit till 10 to midnight and spent a lot of time with the hitters at nighttime in the indoor facility. And so I'd build a great relationship with the pitchers, with the position players, and I had a lot at stake all around with the club. And it was a fantastic deal. And we ended up losing to Arizona State in the 1994 championship game to get to Omaha. And what a crusher that was. It was in 10 innings. And in those days, guys have a hard time understanding, but like R.A. Dickey would pitch Thursday in the regional complete game. And he actually went into the 10th inning of the championship game on Sunday, a couple of days later. And so when pitchers complain about pitching and when they hear about, well, in the old days, well, it was some true stuff. And every team did that. Every team that won, their starter would pitch Thursday, and then he'd end up winning the championship on Sunday. That's just the way you did it. So RA, we lost a tight game in the 10th inning, 3-2 to a great, or it was 5-4, I guess. The national championship is in my mind, losing 3-2. That was 5-4 game to Arizona State. They had the most amazing offense that I'd seen at the time. And so that was a crusher. So right after that, I immediately go out to manage in the Cape Cod League. And that summer, Mike Bianco was coaching third base at LSU. And he was actually I think he was for sure going to get a job at like one of the Louisiana schools. And we thought it was, Coach Bertman had called me to hire me to take Mike Bianco's spot. And he had told me, hey, Mike's going to get that job. And somehow, I don't know, something fell through and Mike didn't get that job. So I was going to be staying at LSU. And then I got a call from Don Kessinger, who was at Ole Miss. And he, I think, Larry Koshel at Oklahoma spoke highly of me. And I know Skip Bertman must have spoken very highly of me to him to say, hey, here's a guy I was going to hire. Here's a guy you should hire. So same deal. So I take on our off day in the Cape, fly down to Ole Miss. The stadium was amazing. At that time, the money was amazing. And he had offered me a deal that was like unbelievable, that no one can believe when I tell them today. But the money from the university was just, whatever it was, $43,000 or whatever that number was. It was still great. But he had offered me 50% of the camps at an SEC school. Now, the crusher for me is I don't get to go out in the Cape anymore to manage. But I get 50% of the camps, which I would have to run. And anybody that knows the histories of SEC camps, especially in those days, the Ole Miss camp was just starting to get it going. But to get 50% of camps was unheard of. And I had my priorities wrong in those days. And I was chasing, like, how can I get a bigger contract and make more money? And I was going to get married to my wife, Janelle, in that year in 95. So I was going to have to get to have my first house. And Ole Miss, the houses didn't cost a lot. So if I'm going to make X amount of money and get 50% of the camps, we're going to be able to buy that little white house in Oxford, Mississippi that I used to grow up seeing in movies. You know what I mean? So the cost of living, obviously, compared to California and in the South and Knoxville, and then you go to Oxford, this is a different world. I'm not smart enough to know about money and things, but I do know that a $30,000 house is a lot cheaper than a $150,000 house. You know what I mean? So even I can figure that stuff out. So it was some amazing times, and I was chasing things, and man, we're going to win here, and then we're going to win there, and then I'm going to help us win there. And I remember people telling me, you can't go to Ole Miss. You can't, Coach Kessinger's going to get fired. And they hadn't been to a regional in 27 years. And nah, you can't go there. You know, you're going to get fired because Coach Kessinger's going to get fired. And I'm like, I had played against them in 1994, the Ole Miss team that was absolutely fantastic. And I don't know how they felt, why they fell short. And, you know, we all know how tough the SEC is, and a lot of things have to go your way, but they didn't make a regional off that 94 team. But I'd known the players, the Jamie Prices and David DeLucci's, and I'm even going to give my boy Richie Harrelson a plug.
Hey, there we go.
I don't know if Richie played much on the 94 club, but what an amazing kid he was. And there were just so many of them. And John McNeese, a pitcher, and all these great pitchers, players and pitchers. And you know, I always hate to start naming names because I'm going to leave off some guys, and we all know that it takes a team. And we got some huge breaks. So when I took that job during the summer, you know, it was later in the summer, when I took the job that summer of 94, David DeLucci had gone in the 10th round and decided not to sign. Jamie Price, who was a really good pitcher, who became an outstanding pitcher, decided not to sign. Jason Young, another pitcher. There was a lot of seniors coming back, and they were the guys that I'd seen play that year before. So I was like, man, I'm not going to get fired. If I do my job, Coach Kessinger wanted me to coach the pitchers again. Again, I said, hey, Coach, I'll coach pitchers, but I need to help with the offense. I need to coach third base, give the signs and all that stuff, which I love to do. And he said, you got it. So I came over there and did that. And we had, at the time, I don't know, we won 40-something games, and we had broken the school record. And we lost to Florida State to get to Omaha, and Doug Minkiewicz, and I don't know if JD Drew would have been on that club, and a few of those guys kicked our butt in a regional. Jamie Price again pitched on Thursday and tried to come back on Sunday, and his arm wasn't capable of doing that, so we got beat up in that championship game. And you know, the theme was, for me, winning was a huge deal for me, and you're a young coach, and you're starting to think, everywhere I go we win, and you know, and we're just going to compete our tails off. And I had known this at the time, but I really learned it as you got, every year I coached, it's all about your players. But I had a way of just convincing them and brainwashing them, like, man, if you just follow the system that I learned at Fullerton, and we did it at Tennessee, and we're going to do it here, like, it wins. And we played a little different style of game, especially compared to SEC teams in those days. So it was a real different style. So we had a blast, but the players I had were absolutely amazing. Coach Kessinger was amazing. And, you know, at Tennessee, Rod Delmonico and Larry Simcox, and the guys that we had, the staff that we had was amazing. It was a collaborative group. And but the players, it always came down to the players, man. The players, and the kind of kids they were. But, you know, both of those programs hadn't won much, so they were into this, you know, hey, playing a different style. We haven't won. Hey, we might as well just buy into what you're selling. And I was selling a lot, man. And I was selling it strongly. And you didn't have choices. You're going to do it like this. And it wasn't too pretty if you didn't. And I'm not too proud of the way I acted when things didn't go well. But boy, did I have a passion of wanting to win and being around great players. And those guys can make your team win a lot of games. So that was the theme that I was learning. Great kids that loved to play, that were talented, and you could accomplish the world, you know. So we have a really good season there. Got something going, win 40-something games, first time in a regional in 27 years. And man, this thing's easy. Like, everywhere you go to regionals, and no matter how many years it hasn't been, but I was too naive to really know how tough it was. And like I said, I was so blessed with amazing players at those places. And both places, there was already some great players that were already there. And then Todd Kelton came in as a freshman that they'd already recruited. And then Miss, it was all about the returning players, and they had brought in a couple freshmen that played a bit. Those players were already there. So it wasn't me going out and hustling for the players. They were just there and implementing a system. So I'm at Ole Miss. It was great. Loved it. People were fantastic. Great following. The fans were great then. And what Mike Bianco's done to that program now, and his vision that he learned from Skip Bertman, it's off the charts. And what they're doing now, you think it was great when I was there. We all know what it's like now. So Oklahoma had just won the national title in 94 and went to the World Series in 95. And Larry Koshel was at Oklahoma, and he convinced me that 18 of my 25 guys are from California. And you want to get closer to home, you're all out there in the South. You come here to Norman, Oklahoma, which compared to Oxford's a lot closer, but it's not still really close to the West Coast, but I was getting a little closer. And his big theme was, you'll be out in California recruiting all the time. And, we have 18 or 25 guys on our roster were California guys, and you fit in, and I want a California guy here. So that sold me. And you're going to make even more money. And they won a national title the year before. And again, I'm now got married in 95. So we're married. And what was so embarrassing to me and what was so ridiculous to me is that, like, here I am, no one had really told me or I didn't pay attention that, like, going job to job makes you looks bad on you. Like, I didn't even take time. Larry Koshel had called me. This guy had been coaching for 40 years with a track record at that time, and there's still only like 3 coaches to this history. He had taken 3 different programs to the World Series, and he just won a national title the year before. But I never even talked to Coach Kessinger and said, hey, here's what I'm thinking about doing. I've been offered this. I just didn't want somebody to persuade me and think a different way. And Coach Koshel was really persuasive to me. And I just told him, after a day with him, convinced me, okay, I'll take the job. And I never even talked to Coach Kessinger and told him, Coach, I'm going to Oklahoma tomorrow or in 2 days. And this was actually right before school. School may have even started already. I think we actually had a 6 a.m. run with my new club for the 96 team. And just how ridiculous, who would ever do that? But no one taught me the importance of how you treat people. And again, I should have been paying attention. I'm 31 years old this time, but I was just chasing. I want to make more money. I want to go to another program. I want to win a national title. That's all I cared about. I want to develop big league players, and everywhere I'm at, we have these great players. They're becoming big league players. And it wasn't because of me. They were already there. They were already great players. And I was starting to figure that out at that time. But just the relations and with Coach Kessinger, and just the embarrassment to be with him for a year and then to leave so quick, and didn't even give him a heads up. And again, part of it is I didn't want him to convince me not to leave. You know what I mean? I didn't want him to do that to me. And this is where I want to be. And I'm going to Oklahoma. And then Ole Miss ended up having a really tough year. I don't even know. They might have won only like 15 to 17 games. And of course, Coach Kessinger ended up getting fired after that year. And I always had some little bit of on my mind that I left him and allowed him to get fired because of my timing. And I'm sure he blames me to this day. And some of the players probably blame me for them having a bad season because I left them. And it was and I wasn't going to have, you can't have a meeting with the players as an assistant coach and say, the reason I'm getting this great job is because of you guys. I just left them. And I still have some great relationships from those guys at Ole Miss, but that was a crusher, and to leave them. And I got some neat letters from some of them, and I got some tough letters. And at the end, they always said how much they loved me and how much they appreciated me. But, you crushed me by leaving, and you didn't tell me about that I was leaving. And that's like just the way you handle things and taking other jobs. And it's a tough business. And especially I made it even tougher because of the way I handle things. And again, and that's why I say I would do everything different, but to be around my Ole Miss players and then the Oklahoma kids, and to continue to keep growing and screwing up and going overboard and being too tough of a standard and too tough on them. And again, like I get calls from him today and tell me, well, I use all your stuff and I love what you did. And I'm like, man, I hated what I did most of the time, and you guys loved it. So I knew I was doing something right, but I knew as a coach and as a person, I need to do a better job. Again, the kids that I have amazing relationships today, they were so amazing. They would do anything you told them. So of course, the kids I had, the Mark McMillans and David DeLucci's and Richie Harrelson, those guys, Todd Mensick's, and I can go on. They would do anything, and they didn't see the ugliness that I did, although they love telling stories about it. So that's where they have their humor, is they get to tell the stories of the things I did. It's like, really? Do you realize you'd get fired if you did that today? And I would fire myself, and my wife would leave me if she knew that I did those things. So And again, it wasn't morally, but it was just the tough love. And I knew that I loved them so much that I felt I could be so tough on them because how much I loved them. And I actually think that's how they felt, although I don't believe today that's right. I do believe that the more that they know you love them and care for them, the farther you can push them. But it's just, I got to sleep at night. And I knew that, man, we may have won and they're becoming really good players, but boy, that's not what you do. And the legacy I want to leave nowadays isn't the legacy that I left on some of them. I've carried on some of the things that I did with them and the things that they told me that were great, but I learned from them and asked them questions, my former players, of, what do you think I could have done a better job of? And like I said, the crazy part is so many of them like, hey, don't change a thing and do it just like you do. And I'm like, that isn't the way you do it, man. It isn't the way. It's not what I do today. It's not what I would do. I have flashes of that, but it's not close to what it was. But I've got to keep my competitive spirit. And as a coach, you can't lose your passion. You can't lose what makes you who you are. People think I'm psychotic, and I guess they're right. And the energy that I can bring on a daily basis to a field after 35 years and at 56 years old. But that's what keeps me going. My passion and my love and the energy, and it makes me feel like I'm 21 until I look in the mirror or look at pictures and see how ugly I'm getting, even though I wasn't too good at looking in those days. So that's what makes me know I'm getting old, but I still feel like I'm a 24-year-old coach that's hard driving, that loves its players. And, so that's, where it's so, it was who I am and what's helped me become the coach I am today and evolving, but it's the embarrassing part of some of the things I did. Mm-hmm. So I went to Ole Miss, Oklahoma, and I went there because of a pitching coach. I didn't want to do pitchers anymore. So I wanted to just focus on the hitters. That's what I felt I could really do. I could help someone that maybe had some problems in that area. As a pitching coach, I was only good for the strike throwers and the really good competitors. If they had something broke, I didn't do a good job with them. So I was doing them a disservice. When a guy had some problems, I couldn't get him over the hump, couldn't get him back on track. Now, if you could really throw strikes and compete, man, I can make you a world beater. We had Jamie Price, who he had an ERA at Ole Miss under 1 for the regular season until the regional, where he had to throw the 2 games and got 2 losses and his ERA inflated. But he did such an amazing job of throwing strikes, and it wasn't anything I did, but I could help run the game and game plan versus an opponent. I knew what I hated to face as hitters, and so I would pitch to how I hated to as an offense. When I prepare hitters as a pitching guy, I did the exact opposite. And because of the special pitchers I had, we had some amazing success, and we'd actually led the SEC in pitching 2 years in a row, at Tennessee my last year, and then at Ole Miss, and we were in the top 10 in both 2 different programs in the country. It wasn't me. It was all about the pitchers as I was starting to learn. And then I went to Oklahoma. I just wanted to be the hitting coach, third base coach, hitting coach, run the offense. Vern Rule had done a fantastic job. Ex-major league player with the Houston Astros, was a phenomenal pitching coach at Oklahoma, and that's why I went there. Well, sure enough, I come there in the fall. He's the pitching coach. He ends up taking a major league job with I don't even know what organization. So he leaves me in the fall. And it's like, oh no, I came here because I want a great pitching coach. Now they end up, for the very first year, I think I had to do the pitching and the hitters. I didn't coach third base because I was doing the pitching and the hitters, and Coach Cochelle had done coach third base forever. So I actually, that year I had to do the pitching, did an absolute horrible job. So the leading the SEC in pitching the first 2 years, as good as we were that bad, okay, at Oklahoma. So I'm starting to get some humble pie. God's always been amazing. He's starting to humble me really fast. He's putting me on the fast track. We could score tons of runs, but we couldn't pitch a lick. Even though we actually had some really good arms, and it was a different ballpark at Oklahoma and hitter friendly, so numbers were high offensively and pitching was tough, but boy, did I get humbled quick. So we did get a pitching coach in the next few years. We actually had 2 more pitching coaches as those years went, but we never pitched it close to the same level that we hit at. We would average over 10 runs a game and still have a tough time winning. We'd win in the 40s, but we couldn't win a regional or a super regional. Super regionals didn't start until like 1999, or maybe it was 2000, my last year actually at Oklahoma. So but we weren't doing well in regionals, but we were scoring lots of runs and really good offensive numbers. But boy, we just didn't pitch at high level. And we actually played defense. I got to be the infield coach defensively and the hitters, and we played. Our numbers were high defensively, really good, but we just didn't pitch really well. And we just didn't. We did, and you're only as good as your pitching staff is, and we didn't achieve the things that I believe that we could achieve at Oklahoma. And I didn't do a good job of as good a job as I could in handling the failures of our pitchers, and did some things, maybe had some actions because we weren't pitching good that weren't what a real coach, what I consider how a real coach handles things. And I just didn't do a great job there. I would change everything that I did there, but I couldn't change anything because of the players I was around and the mentorship from Larry Koshel and the people that I was around there and what they did for me, and most importantly, the players. And so I was growing and growing, but that was some tough things, and end up leaving Oklahoma, and I end up going to Arizona State for part of a season when I left Oklahoma. I don't want to get into the reason that I actually how I had left Oklahoma, because that's a nightmare for me not to remember. But I went to Arizona State for those last 30 games as the volunteer, still getting paid at Oklahoma, and got to be around Pat Murphy, another coaching legend, a crazy, unique style, and really learned some neat things from him, and how a player-driven team at Arizona State, and those kids that I was around in 2001 on that team. And we ended up losing to Cal State Fullerton and Kirk Sarlos in that regional. And then it started to get really good. And then it started to, as crushing as it was in 2001 at Arizona State, and how much I'd learned, and the heartache from Oklahoma that was self-induced, and the way I had handled some certain things, I got to get into professional baseball. And I'd always wanted to do that, but it was so tough for me because I'd never been a professional player. But now I'd built up a little bit of a resume, coaching enough years and coaching enough great players that, man, now no one maybe will care what I did as a player, but hey, who have you coached? You know what I mean? You got any big league hitters? And I had. So, and some really special ones in the Sean Casey's and Todd Heltons and David DeLucci's and Aaron Boone's and Jeff Cirillo's and all kinds of great ones. So I'd been around some really special hitters, and I only mention their names. I had nothing to do with it. I learned way more from them than they learned from me, but I got to see what it looks like, and I was smart enough to pay attention. And here's what they did, and here's how they competed, and here were the routines we did, and here's how they approached things. And they used the field, they hit with 2 strikes, and actually opposite of what today's hitters do. Although today's hitters, the best ones, do that. They use the field, they can hit with 2 strikes. We've allowed in today's game, and this is another subject that I could talk for 20 hours on, they've allowed that strikeouts are okay, and there's great pitching, so it's okay to strike out, and it's okay they play a shift on you because you don't need to hit the ball the other way, and you have to hit the ball in the air, and so many ridiculous things. Back in 1992 when Phil Nevin won the Player of the Year, the Golden Spikes, when I was there, I actually had figured out that the only way to hit a home run was to hit the ball in the air. You know what I mean? So we all knew that then. But he hit 400 because he could use the whole field, and with 2 strikes, he could shoot a ball through the 3-4 hole, and that was without a shift. So he definitely could have done that in today's game. You know what I mean? So it was being a complete hitter and using counts. But yes, we always try to elevate and hit line drives, and you'd be surprised that when you become a line drive guy, how many balls go out of the park. And so like I said, I go all over the place, but
love it.
I don't even remember where we were, Jake. But
yeah.
We were talking about being complete hitters, and I was being around some really special hitters. And so I had a little bit of a resume of being around some great hitters. Again, it wasn't because of me, it was because of them, but I was paying attention to what a great hitter does. Now I know I'm getting back to what great hitters used to do and what they still do today. That's why there isn't as many great hitters today as there used to be. So I got to get in professional baseball, and the New York Yankees hired me. A guy named Mark Newman, who still to this day is the greatest baseball man I've ever been around. And I've been around some amazing guys. And he hired me with the New York Yankees. He was in charge of player development. He'd hired me really because he growing up across from Cerritos College. His house was right across from the field there, he told me. And he knew that Wally Kincaid was the greatest collegiate coach in the history of baseball. He was one of those guys that actually had known that and used to go over and watch Cerritos College play. And when he had known that I had played in that program for 4 years, coached at that program and played there for a year, he said, man, I want a Cerritos College guy. I want to hire one. And another big ally for me was Andy Stankiewicz, who's my best friend, who I grew up with since we were 7 years old. He was in the Yankee organization at that time and had a great reputation because of the person and player he was, and he was just becoming a young coach. He was just starting coach. I was in about my whatever year that is. I'm going in like year number 12 as a coach, but Andy's just starting his first and second year as a coach and manager, coming off playing for so long. So like I always say, if I was a good enough player, I wouldn't have been coaching 35 years. I'd have played for 20, and then now I'd be in my 15th year as a coach. But unfortunately, I wasn't good enough. So I had to start coaching when I didn't want to coach. But I got to start making mistakes early and got to start growing. It just was a slow grow, like a tree that takes a long time to grow, and I'm still growing. So the professional baseball and going to the New York Yankees changed my life as a coach. You get into professional baseball and you play 140 games. And I always didn't want to get into professional baseball because I knew, like, man, if we go out and win 100 games, that means I lost 40. So how am I going to sleep for 40 nights and 40 days going to the park? And so you were going to lose. So you had to freaking learn to lose and handle players, and you can't yell and, embarrassing you're going to look on a professional field yelling at players. So I'm starting to evolve now as a coach and building relationships with players. And now the funny thing is those guys will tell you how much I yelled and how much energy I brought to a professional game, but I thought I was calming down, but I was still, for a professional, it was overboard, but for me, I'm making strides. So my growth as a professional coach and manager and being around some more great players and learning the Yankee way and was really awesome. And I remember, and I started my appreciation for Wally Kincaid and Coach Horton in my Cerritos days, and I had taken them for granted a little bit, even though I'd known the coaching tree there. And today, if you saw the coaching tree from Cerritos and the kinship we have with the former Cerritos players and coaches, it's amazing. But in my first Yankee, we had the 7:00 meetings, and we're going over the Yankee way to play baseball. And here's the pamphlet, and here's what we're going over. And it was like 95% of what the Yankee way was exactly our Cerritos College way.
Wow.
Relays and bunt defenses and all the different things that we'd done. And then I was like going, man, Coach Kincaid, I knew you were the greatest, but you're even better than I thought, because everything we do. Now, we bunted more at Cerritos and Fullerton than the way, because it was more of a style of play than in professional baseball. And that's a topic that ended up helping me evolve a little bit of running an offense too. But we played sound, fundamental, great baseball. And it was the California way. It's so misinterpreted that the last 10 years, how California schools have played baseball and what they think Fullerton did in the Augie Garrido days, or the days that I was there at Fullerton, is like, we had the ability to bunt for hits, but the hitters hit. Like, we didn't bunt every single guy, bunt all the time. And Coach Garrido bunted a lot more. But actually, when I was at Fullerton, Coach Horton ran the offense. So it wasn't this game that so many people thought was this West Coast style. But we had the ability to bunt, and we did bunt way more than other teams, but we hit a lot. We could really hit. You look at any of the Fullerton national titles, those teams could really hit, but they could bunt, and they could just beat you in a lot of ways. So that's what helped morph me from professional baseball and my Fullerton roots and Cerritos roots, and then what I thought would become what a really the perfect offense could look like and evolve into. And so that was part of my growth as a coach and being around different systems. But that Yankee deal was unbelievable. And being around professional baseball, seeing how they do it. And so the 5 years with the Yankees really helped me grow. Here's how professionals do it. And to be a pro and handle losing, and not accept losing, but handle it better. And knowing that every day the nights were tough on me, every loss. But every day I woke up, we're going to get a 10-game win streak going. So it helped me, a lot of sleepless nights, but it helped me grow that you're going to have to lose, and the appreciation for how hard the game of baseball is, man. It is a super duper hard game. Here I'm managing these guys that signed for over $1 million first round draft choices and all these great players, and they still screw up a lot. It also made me appreciate how much coaching, even that managing in the minor leagues, like how important coaching is, and teaching players to be fundamentally sound and playing the game correctly and playing the game hard and keeping them accountable. So that was helping me too, because it's not what other people thought. And hey, in pro ball, you just roll the balls out. And, so I was learning, and you get there in professional baseball, you get to be around a million different guys. He manages a AA team. He's a hitting coach for this club. And you have like 15 people on your staff and your organization. So you get to be around them in spring training and ask a lot of questions and learn from them. And I'm starstruck with the Yankees, Bucky Dent's a manager in AAA at that time. And that's when I got to form a relationship with Kevin Long. He's a AAA hitting coach who's now been a superstar, big league hitting coach for the last, 15 years. And won a couple of World Series, one with the Yankees, one with the Nationals, and helped the Mets get to a World Series. So I'm getting around all these really special players and guys. And I'm just like a sponge, learning and still hustling my tail off, trying to outwork everybody, but learning and growing and making mistakes with players and learning from it, and trying to just carve my niche of what it really looks like to be a real coach, mentor, hard driving, winning coach, but loving players. So, I'm trying to continue to grow. So I'm at the Yankees for those 5 years, but the pro game, what it does to your family and how tough it is on your wife.
Mm-hmm.
And we're living in Arizona, living a dream in Arizona, a place I love. But then I leave for 6 months a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm away from my family. And now we're starting to grow. We have 2 sons when I first get into pro ball. And the last year with the Yankees, I know that Janelle's now pregnant. We're going to have 3. So I'm going to be raising 3 boys 6 months of the year. So I knew I've got to get back home. I got to get back to the real world. And USC offers me a job. And, people still don't realize the tradition that USC has, the national championships they've won, and the great tradition there. And Chad Kreuter had played Major League Baseball, had a great career, and he had just come over there to take Mike Gillespie's spot at USC, and he's actually the brother-in-law, or Mike Gillespie's his father-in-law. So I love, big, huge Mike Gillespie fan, and loved him so much. And he was such a mentor for me through my career, someone that I could always lean on. So Chad Kreuter had taken the job, and he called me to say, hey, I want you to come over here and play a big part in this program. But it was like, we're in end of July. I've got X amount of games to go. What am I going to do? But you've got to recruit. And I was going to make twice the money and be with my family. And I got to make this decision, and I got 2 days to make it. But I know what this pro game does to my family. And we were actually homeschooling the boys that year in Charleston, South Carolina, to be with the family. And my wife loved Charleston, and the Charleston people were great. And I loved the pro game. And, but I knew it was best for me and my family to have to go to the pro game. The problem was for me is, even though I was going to be making double the money that I was making, living in California, which I'd always known, but I had 2 days, I couldn't research everything. And I wasn't even smart enough to know that my property taxes in California were going to be more than my mortgage for a 3,500 square foot home in Arizona. And It was right during the housing boom. And we thought we were going to bought our home for $250. We're going to sell it for $800. I mean, it was going that crazy in the housing boom in 2007. And we had friends selling their houses for that. And we're like, we're going to sell our Arizona home and make huge money. Boy, did God have another thing to tell us again. So I take the job, and the housing boom was just that 207 summer, or 206 summer. It was 206, 207 baseball year. The housing boom was starting, and we couldn't sell our home. And the whole reason we thought we'd make so much money from the house that we could do a dream of living back to California, that was not going to happen. So my family now becomes even worse. I'm coaching at USC, a dream school for me, but I live in California while my family lives in Arizona. Now, at least in professional baseball, 6 months away, but you have the greatest 6 months ever with your family. Taking them to school, on the golf cart in Arizona, 200 yards away from the house, the school and the fields, and taking them to school, coaching basketball, their football, and their we're doing fall baseball. I'm coaching all their games, doing all this, having a blast, but then you leave for 6 months. Now I'm living in Arizona. They live in Arizona. I'm in California at a friend, George Yesback, a great friend of mine. They let me live at their house for free. Leaving at 5:15 in the morning with Dave Lawn, the pitching coach with Chad Cruder. We're having a blast. Although I'm waking up at 5:08, I'm out of me and Dave are out to school at 5:15 in the morning, driving from Orange County to LA. Seemed like it was 100 miles, but actually it could take you 20 minutes when you leave at 5 o'clock. Mm-hmm. But if you left at 6:02, it might take you an hour and a half. So we were out by 5:15 every day. But my family's in Arizona. Now you have to recruit all the time. The only breaks now you have as a college coach is December. You don't have September off like I did. Mm-hmm. So now I'm not with my family at all. I know it's only Arizona. I did some recruiting in Arizona, but I'm now away from them even more. So this is an absolute crusher. Like, we can't do this. We can't buy a house in California. And I'm living away from my family. So we're going to have to rectify this. You can't go back into professional baseball because in the minor leagues, when you start making money in college baseball, you'll make not even close to the money back in professional baseball. And those were the days that aren't even close to what it is today, what the collegiate coaches are making, or some of them. So I'm offered a job at Auburn. And with Tommy Slater offered me a job at Auburn. Again, going to be making great money that I thought was great money then. But more importantly is if we have to keep our home in Arizona, if we can't sell it and go to Auburn and build another house. Again, it happened so quick. I had talked to Chad through that whole year. Like, I can't do this. If you guys at SC, if you can't get me a home here, I can't do this. But it was ugly because I had to leave him again. Leave another coach that really trusted me and valued me, and I valued him. And, I love being around Dave Lawn, who was just the absolute amazing best worker, and just being around him made me better. But I had to leave. So I went to Auburn, and back in the SEC, and Tommy Slater convinced me we got the best recruiting class coming in. And it may have been like a top 3 or 4 recruiting class. Butch Thompson was the pitching coach. What an amazing guy Butch is. And Tommy, and man, we're going to come here and we're going to win some championships here. Well, they'd had some tough the years before. Tommy'd had a tough go in conference, in conference games. And I didn't do my research enough to know actually what the record had been in the last 3 or 4 years there. And we ended up starting like 6 or 7 freshmen that year. And they were some great, great freshmen. Pitching staff just didn't pitch as good as I thought they would, and the arms that we had, and we just didn't pitch that great. And we played some good offense. We played some really good offense, and had some good defensive players, and we competed. But from the pitching wise, we just didn't really pitch that well. And as a team, we just didn't find a way to win. And when we pitched well, we wouldn't score runs, and we didn't do real well with all these young players. But we knew the future was bright. But it ended up happening that Tommy ended up getting fired after that 2007 year. I'd never been anywhere where anybody had gotten fired. Mm-hmm. So what another tough guy is like, it's in the SEC. We're doing great financially. For some reason, we built a house because of me being arrogant that we're going to win at a high level. And I knew Butch was going to do a great job as a pitching coach because there was nobody better than him. We just were young everywhere, and we just weren't ready to win. And so he got fired, and I'm crushed. And it's like, man, I've been at USC for a year now. Auburn, man, I know people are going to start thinking he can't coach. They're losing everywhere he's at. He must not get along. They're not winning. He just leaves to go different places. And so that was a really, really tough summer, man. That was a really, really tough summer. And then where God humbles me, he gets me back going again. And Todd Helton, what he had done for me and my family to help me, this is after the 2008 year, I just can't say enough. And he had hired me to be his hitting coach, and he moved us to Colorado. Moved us to Colorado, paid me $50,000 to be his hitting coach, $50,000 cash to be a hitting coach. We lived out there family got to be in Colorado. We got to regroup, although I didn't have a job at the time but I need a job. And what a tough few months that was, not knowing where I was going to go to, but I'm getting paid maybe from Auburn until, a certain month, and they're helping out as much as they can. And then I'm getting this 50,000 from Todd, and, being around him every day and what he had taught me about what it looks like to work. And we would do the same routines that we did as a collegiate player with me. And your confidence is growing because of the player that he's becoming, and that we're still doing things, and we have communication daily on what a lifetime 300 hitter, how he acts, how he works. And I'm doing his workouts with him in the morning, taking him to the gym. And, even he's trying to teach me to hunt, which I have no clue. And so we're teaching the boys how to hunt, or he's teaching them, and we're living a little different lifestyle for them because he's got his ranch 45 minutes away. And again, I'm surviving, but where the heck am I going to coach, and believing that I'll never coach again. And so it's just getting really crazy. But then I got to interview with a couple of professional teams, and I ended up getting an offer to Colorado Rockies to be a hitting coach with them. So I had that opportunity, and I have that opportunity. And then I'm getting ready to accept it. And then the California Angels, or Los Angeles Angels, I don't even know what they were called that year, offered me a managerial position. It was going to be a hitting job for the Rockies and a managerial job for the Angels. And that helped really change my life again. And being with the Angels, and professionally, collegiately, and now with the Angels, it's going to be a lifestyle change. We're going to make so much little less, but I'm still getting to work with Todd Helton in the off seasons, and he's helping us financially and doing the things that he's doing, and other professional hitters that I was getting to work with in those days. But the Angels, Mike Scioscia was the biggest godsend I could have ever had in professional baseball. Got to go to big league spring trainings with him, got to be around him and his staff, and Dino Ebel, the third base coach, who's now the Dodgers third base coach, and Mike Butcher, the pitching coach, and all the amazing coaches that I got to be around. And the style the Angels played in those days was first to third and stealing bases and bunting game. And boy, it played a style that I really loved and enjoyed, and a real aggressive on the bases. And you could have little guys that could win baseball games. And when you were managing a guy in A-ball and he was 5'6", and you told him if you could do A, B, and C, you could still play in the big leagues, and it was going to really happen. So you were convincing those guys. And Mike Scioscia was so ingrained and so involved. He knew what every A-ball player was doing, every AA. And so, I got to, manage some amazing players and pitchers in the Angel organization. I got to be around a hitting coach named Manny Del Chiaro, who did a great job, Brandon Emanuel and Brenton Del Chiaro, who did an awesome job with me. And I'm learning those are guys that play in the Angel organization. And I'm learning I've got these great players, and we're winning some league titles, and never could win it all. We were always losing players, but we're doing a great deal. And so in the first year we won a league title. And the next year I have some amazing players, and Mike Trout's now on this club. And we picked him up in 2009 for the playoff run. Got to be around him and had a rotation of Tyler Skaggs, who, there's been so many people during this thing that have now died. And, that the coaches, and I don't even like to talk about them because I know I'll cry on this thing, but, Tyler Skaggs, who just died a year ago. So what a crusher. And Garrett Richards and Corbin, the big left-hander from the Nationals, and Randall Gritchick, and some other really great players. And John Karsich was my shortstop, who's now doing a great job coaching collegiately. And so I was getting to be around some amazing kids from that 2010 and then 2011. And it was going great. And I'm starting to find my niche and really starting to figure this professional game out. And I'm getting a little less, I'm calming down a little more every year, still not losing my appetite to win, but I'm becoming a real professional coach, and what it should look like. Again, way more aggressive than other people believed it should look like, but I believed what I believed, and was going to compete and get my guys to want to win every day. And And there was challenges. You win the first half and you want to win the second half. And it's like, well, you're already in the playoffs and hey, you're going to finish in last. Here's how it worked. But no, we're not. We're going to still win. And so to keep your guys, wanting to compete and develop them, because that's always the number one goal. But I believe that winning just as important as developing, because part of winning, teaching to win is part of developing. So what a tough run again. I'm away from my family in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Then I'm managing in Little Rock, Arkansas in AA. Things are going awesome and I'm loving it. And I'm feeling the big leagues are in the future of what different things people have been telling me about being a third base coach in the big leagues, possible hitting coach. Managers seem far-fetched, but who knows? You know what I mean? The game was changing a little bit. You didn't have to be this superstar player to be a manager. So things are getting, and I just absolutely love the pro game from a baseball standpoint, playing every day. You lose, tough loss, come back and get them, keeping your players going every day and showing energy and bringing passion daily to get those guys to play every day. And then one of my great friends, Dave Serrano, gets the job at the University of Tennessee. And I had amazing fun memories at Tennessee, and a place that I always wanted to go back to. I always wanted to be the head coach, but being an assistant would be great. And now the money's starting to get really crazy in the SEC. So now I'm going to triple my money. Get to be with my family, because we couldn't homeschool. If my wife didn't like the cities we were in, we weren't homeschooling the boys, and they're getting older, and they've got all-stars in the summer when they'd be coming out, and it's so tough mentally on your family. Your kids are having problems, and your wife's calling you. The boys are starting to grow and they really need a father, and I'm not there. And my wife's the most amazing woman in the world, and she's even going to be a nursing school with why she has 3 boys. She's going to nursing school because we need to make more money. She needs to be able to work now. And she's going to nursing school and does fantastic with that. So I'm not there with my wife to see her graduate from nursing school. I was that guy, and I still am today to some extent. Like, of course, I couldn't leave a game to go see my wife graduate. Of course, even in my son graduates from TCU, and the graduation is on TCU, but I'm not missing a game. I've never missed a game in my life. I'm not missing one now. So I can't even go watch my son graduate, you know what I mean? Which is so backwards. And that's how much my players need to mean to me. And my family gets it. And like, if I go see you, son, how much I love you and you're my son, but I've got 40 other sons here, and how can I leave them? And mom's going to be with you, and it's a graduation, and you're going to come right to the game in the 8th inning. So a little backwards thinking, and I would tell any other coach that's not right, but that's what I did. That's something I've even still done. And boy, I sure am glad my wife's, we always had kids in the off season when they were born, because I would have to go watch. I would have to be with my wife when one of the child are born. And so that's another deal. And we once during the season, my third son, Helton, was in the middle at USC, and thank goodness we had him induced on an off day, flew to Arizona and back. So but we got that one done. Thank goodness there was no complications. And again, thank goodness with God's hand. But obviously, if there had been complications or if there was worries, I would have had to stay with her and miss a game. So, as you can see how strange I am, but how complex I am, and just, all over the place with those things. But the Angel deal was awesome. And then Dave takes a job at Tennessee, and that's going to be amazing. Like, I'm going to go to Tennessee. The problem now is we've got this amazing staff. Greg Bergeron's going to be the third base coach and run the offense. I'm going to come over to be the recruiting coordinator, and I'll be the hitting coach. As hard as that was going to be to not coach third base and run an offense, hey, this is what I signed up for. Bergie was a former player of mine. I love him to death. He had done an amazing job. He had taken 2 teams to World Series at Irvine and Fullerton with Dave. They'd been to 2 World Series, and we're going to go. It's going to be easy. We're going to a third one in Tennessee. We're going to get back in the SEC and kick butt like we always had. Little we were mistaken. I known how much the SEC had grown and how great of coaches there were all up and down the board. And I'd been out of recruiting for 3 years, you know what I mean? And you're jumping into the big bad SEC, and those 2 are coming from California, and I'm coming from professional baseball. So when I take the job, I've got to leave my team. We had just won the division title at the break. 70 games. We went 2-0 the first 2 games, I remember. And now I got to leave the team. And that what a crusher to leave professional baseball. And Mike Scioscia and Tony Reagans and those guys saying, hey, you got a chance to be the bench coach and, third base coach. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? And I'm like, you're not getting it. I'm making 3 times the money and be with my family. If I was in professional baseball, it's even longer in the big leagues. And at that time, you guys wouldn't pay me more money to be the big league third base coach, because why would you need to? Like, you could double my money and I'd still be making $60,000 less than I would be at that time at Tennessee. And I know money's not the end all, but it's sure makes a life with 3 kids. Being with your family and having more money is the greatest thing in the world. Okay. Their health and being with their families way more important than money. But if you can add a little bit of money to do things for your family, then, it's more power to you. So, boy, we get over there, and Tennessee had really been struggling. And boy, what a rat race that recruiting and jumping into. And we were real fortunate. We recruited some that freshman class that I was able to bring in, was an amazing group, position player wise, but it still struggled on the mound depth wise. There was a couple of really good pitchers that we brought in, but from a depth standpoint. And that was when it had started, when I was really starting to see that everywhere I'd go, Vanderbilt already had all the great pitchers. South Carolina at that time had everybody. I was going to 1 million games, and I'd find out, hey, this guy had committed 2 years ago. I thought I was fine. Oh, I saw this little guy, Sonny Gray. I found the next great pitcher. He's only like 5'10", 5'11". There's no way he's being recruited. Oh, yeah, he's been committed to Vanderbilt for 1.5 years. And it'd be like, everywhere I went, we couldn't get arms. But if I was able to watch some hitters and see 20 at-bats, man, I felt that some of the guys that were overlooked, I could find some really good hitters. So we brought in a really good freshman class, and had a tough year. The year 1, although our kids played their butts off, but it's just tough in the SEC. Year 2 with freshmen. So we had 7 freshmen starting every day. So we were there, and we knew this was going to be a great group of position players. And the program was going to grow. But you know how it is in that SEC. If you're not good enough, you get your butt actually kicked. You don't survive if you're not good. So we had a really tough go again that second year. And it's tough for me personally losing, but it's tough for me that I'm not coaching third base. I don't run the offense, and I'm recruiting, which is really tough. But even when you're not the recruiting coordinator, you have to recruit your butt off. So there's never, it's tougher to be the recruiting coordinator because you filled everybody's call. But as the other guy, you're out all the time and you're doing a ton. But the recruiting coordinator, is a crazy task. So, but the toughest part is on the field for me, that we're not the kind of team I want to be. I don't get to run an offense. I don't get to coach third base. I'm not on the field, which is really weird for me. So 2 years in a row, I'm not even on the field. So that's tough. And Dave Serrano, the great friend of mine, and he knew it was wearing on me a little bit. And he knew that he'd always be here. You okay? Is this driving you crazy? And I'd be like, no, I signed up for this. Bergie's doing a great job, and he's fantastic at what he does. So, but it's tearing me up. You know what I mean? It's hard to do it. And I'm learning how the SEC plays and the style that the college game's starting to become. So I'm growing as a coach. So what had happened was then Jim Schlossnagle, I'd been paying attention to TCU and what he'd been doing, and watching from afar, man, this guy's doing some amazing things. And for the weird part was his 2013 team broke his regional streak. They'd been to 11 years in a row regionals, and they had this awesome pitching staff and some really good position players, but they weren't playing very well, and nothing was going great with them. And they lost a coach. Tony Vitello had gone to Arkansas, so they had lost a coach, and I didn't know Jim Schlossnagle real well myself personally, but I paid attention from afar, the amazing job he was doing. And my friends all around the country were coming out to TCU playing. You won't believe TCU, the teams they're putting it together, and the fans they get, and their facilities. And I'd been to the old TCU, so I didn't really understand. So Jim Schlossnagle calls Dave, and Dave says to me, hey, Dave, Schlossnagle wants to speak to you on being an assistant. I said, Dave, I can't do that. I'm not going to leave anywhere for an assistant job. I'm not leaving you. I love it here. This is where I'm going to be. And he knows he knows it's been wearing on me as a coach, but I'm okay. This is what we signed up for. We'll start getting it done. We're bringing in really good players. It's just taking some time in this league. So he tells Schloss that, and I guess Schloss says, hey, can I at least still talk to him? And Schloss is, no one's more resilient. No one's more persistent. He just gets after it. And when he wants something, he's going to get it. So he tells Dave, hey, I'm going to talk to him. And Dave calls him and says, hey, he's going to at least talk to you. You got to at least listen to him. I think it's in your best interest. And Dave really cared for me. And he said, well, you need to at least talk to him. And after I talked to him, and I had a little vision of what I wanted an offense to look like. He had talked about, I want to change our whole mentality of an offense and a style of play. And so I said, okay, I'll meet with you. I went down and met with him. He was coaching Team USA at the time. I drove from Knoxville I flew from Knoxville to Cary, North Carolina, met him, sold him my vision. This is what I believed. And he was so on top of it as a head coach, and his passion to get to Omaha. And that's all he wanted to do, was get to Omaha, and you could feel it. And they were a recruiting juggernaut. And so he had sold me on the players they had coming back. So I did a little research, and of course I did my research. And the one thing I was never, ever going to do is, I am going to a school where you can pitch and really pitch, and you have a great pitching coach. Mm-hmm. Now, I've been like at Auburn, Butch Thompson was a great pitching coach. We just weren't, and we had some great arms. They just weren't ready to be great pitchers. Well, at TCU, I had known Kirk Saarloos from all his days. I didn't know him great, but I'd known all about him. And he had the greatest reputation that you possibly could have as a player, and more important, as a person. And I knew what he was as a player and how competitive he was. And I knew that they were going to pitch. Coach Schlossnagle had 3 TCU guys on his USA pitching staff. I knew they were going to pitch a little bit. So I knew we're going to get it done. My job was to become a good offensive team. And I had some confidence in the players that were coming back. They'd had a really tough year as an offense, but I believe with a change of scenery and that we could do some things there. So, but we were going to pitch and play competitive baseball from the defensive side. So I still, man, Dave, how do I leave you? I flew down, my wife and I, Janelle, we flew down to meet Chris Del Conte, the AD there. And I still didn't want to leave Tennessee, but when I got down to see Fort Worth and the school and what it looked like, and this private school of 10,000 students and how gorgeous it was, which that stuff didn't used to be important to me. But as we're driving with CDC and we're driving down the roads, and I'm looking at this campus thinking, boy, you want to bring players here? And this campus of feeling safe. And I'm getting older now, and I know what it means to want kids that are going to be going to college and what being a father really is. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to take this challenge. And boy, what a ride we had right away. And it was because we pitched, and the offensive players were so competitive, but it was pitching, and Jim Schlossnagle. And we went on a run for our first 4 years. We get to World Series. The school had only been to 1 World Series in their history of the school, in 2010, which actually was a team that I watched on TV as a professional coach with the Angels. And I was watching them play, in their style and their culture that they were growing. And man, I couldn't believe how hard Brian Holiday and the way Matt Pert competed. And I was like, this is the kind of program I want to be involved in. So I knew that when you got there, it wasn't at Tennessee, and we were changing the culture, and it was going to happen one day, but it wasn't there yet. At TCU, Jim Schlossnagle had already changed his culture. My job is to come in and do a great job with the hitters and play defense and be a great baseball team. And that was what I believed I could help with that. And again, I can't go back to this enough. Kirk Saarloos, the best pitching coach in the country, was going to really make them pitch, and we've continued to do that. So, and I knew he would develop, and we were going to develop professional players, and we were going to do it all. So we had a great run of those 4 years. And again, as much as I brag about Jim Schlossnagle and Kirk Saarloos, this is where I had already known, but I learned that the players, and the kind of people they are. And the group of kids that we had here at TCU and continue to have were so special. And because it was a different world, it's a private school, which costs a ton. You have to be elite students, and their families have to pay so much money for for us to be competitive. So the parents are the MVPs in our program because every kid we get has to pay more money than he would for another school. 99% of the time. So it's about a family that believes in the coaching staff, that loves the culture, that says, hey, we'll pay more money because we believe in them getting their education. We believe that you'll grow them into a man, that you'll develop their baseball skills and you'll make them better. So we had to convince and had to sell people that, yeah, you may have to pay $40,000 more than at the other school, but here's what we're going to do for him. And we know there's other amazing coaches around the country, and we knew there's other, but we had something that we believed in, that we could sell, that was real. And it was our players, and the way that to see a freshman turn into a senior and get his degree, like we have 8 to 9 players that we're in Omaha and they already have their degrees, and that at my other schools and the state schools, and no disrespect to that, but they were more like me. Like they just cared about playing baseball, and thank goodness they were better students than me, and they were going to hopefully get their degree, but that wasn't their end all. You know, we were able to sell here at TCU that, you know, you're either going to become a CEO or a major leaguer, and you can do both. So like you can do that. So in the classroom, you're going to excel at a high level, but as a player, and you can do the same, but you can be that. So we're going to sell both. And again, a lot of it's like, when I was coaching at Fullerton and Arizona State and some SEC schools, like you want them to get their degrees, but that wasn't the end all. Here, that's the end all. And it's part of, like I said, evolving. I'd probably have to, when I recruited at those schools, I would teach a little different then. But it was that, you know, they weren't paying as much to go to school there, and they didn't really want to hear that. They wanted to hear how many times it's Fullerton won a national title and how many Omahas. And here, we actually didn't have that at the beginning. When we first, our recruiting classes at the beginning is the 2010 had won, and here's our vision. Here's what we're going to build here. And then we went to 4 in a row. So the players that we were committing as freshmen and sophomore, they were seeing that. They were seeing the vision. You told us this could happen. So, but it really hadn't happened. But then, like kids on this school now, we've been to 5 World Series in the last 10 years, which besides Florida is the most in the country. You know what I mean? And because it's out of sight, out of mind, since we didn't go to 2 in a row, and then the COVID, which we thought we were back on track, people may forget that TCU, that we had gone to 4 in a row, you know, in a row. So when you haven't been there in 2 years or 3 years because of COVID, like I haven't been, it feels like I've never been to Omaha. So that fire is so much back. So the fire before was to win the national title. Now it's like, we got to get back to Omaha. We got to get back to do what we do. And that 4-year run, which we took for granted, how hard it really was. And so it makes you, the more as a coach, and that you've got to just prepare them better and get them to convince them how important it is to be a great student. Because the correlation of our 3.0 teams and Omaha's, it always goes hand in hand. Nothing happens by accident. And how you do anything is how you do everything. And so that's the culture that we have here, and that's what we do. And most importantly, our kids follow it and they believe it and they buy into it. And that's the passion that we bring to them. But my relationships in the last 6-7 years with my players here, because I was finally the best version of myself. I still make mistakes, but nothing like I did. I've been at such peace as a person and as a coach because of the man I'm becoming, and because of the other coaches have made me become that. But the players and being around them and what I wanted my kids to become, you know, they were just, you know, junior high and elementary and high school at that time. And I got to watch these kids and say, I'm not falling short. I'm going to have my kids become the kind of kids I have at TCU. When I look back, all the amazing kids I had before that, they were amazing. And I learned from them. But boy, it came to fruition at TCU. Like, what a difference I can make if I can do it the right way. And that's why all the mistakes I made and the apologies I had to make and the sleepless nights of handling situations wrong, at TCU, it got to really capsulize itself and really, like, this is what it looks like. This is what you do. Here's how you treat them. My wife played such an important part of watching what an amazing mother she is. And like, how would you want your own kids to be treated? And again, I want my kids treated tough. I want my kids accountable. So I still make the kids like, you're going to do it right. You're going to be accountable, but it's not the end of the world. I'm going to still love you to death. How you perform isn't the end all of what kind of person you're going to become. I'm going to try to force you to become an awesome player and get you to love doing it. But like, that's not the end all. The end all is the person you become. what kind of
Wow.
job you have, what kind of family you raise. And just, I think when you have a family and you have 3 boys and you're raising them, and I still have a 13-year-old that we're fighting to try to continue to get him to be his best version. And so I just got to grow in so many ways. And my kids got to watch these TCU kids up close and have them over the house and so many times, and they got to grow at the field with them and go to Omaha 4 times. And when they were growing up, they think it's the only way to, they thought it was like
Mm.
their birth. My one child went 4 years in a row from whatever it was, 6 years old to 10, 11 years old, and
Wow.
celebrating, birthdays in Omaha, thinking that like, oh, this is where Lane's birthday is every year. You know what I mean? Like, this is like, then when you're not there, they like, how come we don't have birthday? You know what I mean? So the growth of that and the hunger that it gets, and why you want your kids to grow, why Omaha is so important for them as a collegiate player, because of the memories they have and what they still tell you. And so it's been just such a great growth. And so again, that's why I say like I would change so many things that I did and the way I coached and treated, but yet those guys became so good. You thought you were doing something right, but it really wasn't the way it needed to be. And now as although I'm still not perfect, I'm evolving into the man that I want to be and the coach, and they go hand in hand. And I learned to have that you can, balance in my life. And when I get to the field and I'm with them, nobody's going at it harder. But off the field with my family and with my players off the field. And when I call them, I don't call them to see how they're doing as a hitter. Or you work how are you doing as a person? And my love and relationship with them. And they have done so much more for me, the players and the coaches I've been around, that I've done for them. So they've made all the difference in the world for me. And it just keeps you going, and it keeps your energy and the passion. And then there is that neat thing of the development once you get to the field, and they have a scoreboard and there's records, wins and losses.
Mm-hmm.
And I want them to have the experience of winning. And I know the correlation of, if you'll have complete buy-in and work your tail off, we will win, because we're at a program that can recruit those kind of players. So when you fail record-wise, I've failed them as a coach, because you're a good enough player. If I do a good enough job of getting you to play well, we will win. And not every coach can say that. There's not a million TCUs out there. So winning isn't the end all, because if I was at a place that didn't have the resources and the great players that we have, I would have to change my mentality a little bit from winning.
Mm-hmm.
But the development of them, of people and becoming a man, and the growth will always be the most important. But when you're around the kind of kids I am, winning is huge, because we have the luxury to have everything we could need as a coach and player to win.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in just an amazing place for me to do everything I could possibly want. Develop, grow them into men, get their degrees, and win. And that national championship in Omaha is a driving force of every day, developing Omaha. Trust, it's developing them to want to be that, to want to be major league players, to just know what it takes to have managed and coached so many major league players, that I want them to be around those kind of guys that I come back to the program, and that can try to teach them what I was able to teach them as players at their age, and develop them at their age, and then they'll continue to develop when they leave TCU as a player. So.
Wow. Coach, that's amazing. And as I sit here and I took notes the whole time while you were talking, and the things I write down here, first thing, winner. You talk about your whole career there, and every place you've been, pretty much you're a winner. Even going back to the Alaskan and Cape League, and then I go to Motivator. And then I see, as I listen to your story, I see taking advantage of opportunities. When you look at your story and you've been there with, Coach Garrido, Coach Horton, Coach Saran, I mean, the list goes on and on and on here of the guys you've been around. And then, the three things that stand out to me the most is your passion and love for the game. You're a learner, and your energy, like our listeners, whoever's listening to this, they ought to be able to tell you're fired up and about your story, but just about your guys and your kids. But going back to the big leagues and the pro ball, obviously I think you can say you learned empathy while you were coaching in those places. How did you bring that back to the college game so it'll translate to your players at the college level?
So yeah, and you hit it right on the head. And that's the two words that I use to really, that I believe really what the pro game did for me is the empathy and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
As a younger coach, I really didn't have that. I had the drive of them to reach the best player in person they could be, but I didn't have the empathy. You know what I mean? And I couldn't, the guy that was struggling, or the guy that, like, baseball's not the end of the world for him. I looked down on him. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
there for him, and I didn't pat him on the back or, make them maybe feel as important as they actually were. I didn't have the empathy. I didn't see it like that. It's like, you're not hitting 300 or 400 or have a 2 ERA. You're not helping us. You know what I mean? And so I wasn't there for him. And when you get into professional baseball, you have to release players. You're seeing players come and go, and you sit across from them and you're crying while you release a player because
Mm-hmm.
you know that their career's over. And what am I going to do with it? It made you really appreciate why education and why going to college. And when I released a high school player, as opposed to a collegiate player that either had his degree or was close to it, the difference when the high school kid that's now 24, no education, what am I going to do with my life? And I don't know, you know what I mean? But you can do it, you know what I mean? And then the collegiate kid that has a degree or is, 24 hours from it, it's already, because I talk through that with them all the time, and you'll be all right. You're going to finish your school. You'll get back. You'll get a great, you know what I mean? So it was so much easier for that meeting, even though they're crying and I'm crying with them. And what was the pro ball, which what I wanted to try to separate myself compared to the old school professional baseball guys, is I tried to have a collegiate, and I didn't call it collegiate. I just called it what a coach would do. I tried to build relationship with all my pro players. I tried to learn about their families and their brothers and sisters. So I didn't treat them like the business. I treated them just like I would. So I've never coached a game different in professional baseball, even in AA, than I did in collegiate baseball. And I didn't treat the players different. It's just tougher because guys are coming and going, and it's you're starting to getting to know them as a person, and they're gone. And obviously you don't have the recruiting background where I remember you as a sophomore in high school when I recruited you, or when you came to campus. And I know your mom and dad in person because I've met them and built that relationship with your brothers that came, or grandma and grandpa who came on your recruiting visit. So it's a little different because you're getting to know them better. But I always went about it the same, and I cared for my pro players just like I do my college players. I just didn't get to know them all.
Yeah.
I didn't know them as much, but I was forming those, and you're only with some of them for a year, a month, whatever. And so you still try to make an impact, and more importantly, they always made impacts on me because I wanted to get them to know, them as people. But the game had never changed for me. But it was just, I love pro ball because you played so many games, and we get to keep playing and develop. And I loved it because you're around the greatest players that there are. The collegiate level, if they're college players, and I'm at the highest level of collegiate wise, so I've got great players, but they're still collegiate players that you're hoping to be really good. So that stuff didn't change for me, but the empathy and compassion, again, learning how hard the game is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's where I really evolved. And that's where the niche of, as much as I love the pro game and the opportunities I have of going back to professional baseball and doing all that, it's a little bit different world. And I just love my players and what we have here. And it's a really tough one. But the empathy and compassion is what I've learned. And again, like, I appreciate you saying that, hey, what I see as a winner, it's the players, you know what I mean? Like, I do know what it looks like because I've been around enough, but I learned that it's not because of me. It really isn't. And I know that it's about the players, but I do know that, hey, if I tell you, if you do A, B, and C, we can win, and they believe in it. And how do you know? Because I watched them do that. But as soon as I started thinking, boy, hey man, everywhere I've gone, at first we won, that wasn't it. And then I went to a couple places in a row that we didn't go to a regional. And And that's where I took it personal. Boy, I'm losing it. I can't coach anymore. We don't win anymore. So I know that's not the end all. So when you win, you know it's because of the players. When you lose, you really look in the mirror like, I got to do a better job. And something I'm not doing, I don't have enough empathy. I'm not with them when they're struggling. You know what I mean? So that's where you evolve and grow and build your relationships and build your trust and the love for them. But no one's been more blessed than me. That's the one thing, like I tell everybody, I'm not the smartest. I'm not the smartest. I'm not the best coach. I'm not even the best worker, even though I try to be as hard a worker as possible. But no one's been more blessed than me. No one's been around better coaches and players than me. I learned so much from them. So the blessing to be around it, to grow. And then God's always been there. Like God, he loves to humble me. And then he always picks me up. He humbles me some more and he picks me up. He never allows me to take myself too serious because it's not about me. It's about what you're giving them and what they do for you. And I know that full-heartedly. It doesn't mean I'm not going to compete to try to beat your tail. But and when we do beat your tail, it sure wasn't because of me, it was because of them. And if we do, when you beat my tail, I need to find out what I did wrong with them and I got to do a little better. But I know they're going to get it, they'll get it done for me. But it's just been an amazing life, and it's a neat story for me, and I'm excited to tell it because it's not all great, but I know how blessed and to be where I am and around the people I am, and it's amazing.
Absolutely. And you talk about coaching pro ball, and even in college, you've been around, whether it's anywhere from when you were at Cal State to Tennessee, to Ole Miss. I mean, we can go on the players that you've coached. What are the characteristics that you've seen that make successful players?
And these are some of the things that I talk about, some non-negotiables. And I mean, I've managed or coached over 80 major league players, and I'm almost telling you to a T. They were relentless competitors. They were super coachable. Super duper coachable. And when I say that, that's what drives me crazy a little bit about coaching, is when I coach some of these amazing players, like when I had a Todd Helton, he had hit 700 before I had ever met him. But if I told Todd, hey, Todd, we need to do this, you need to hit on your head, you need to hit upside down, you need to hit with one arm, he would say, yes, sir, and do whatever I told him. Now, when he left me, he may have said, hey, this guy's got no clue. Who is this guy? But I'll be darned, when I was with him, he was so respectful. He listened to everything you said. And that went on and on and on of all these great players. They were so coachable. And what was so crazy to me is these are the great players that don't even need me, but yet they use me as a resource and they listen. Then I'll coach a guy who hits 210. And when I say, hey, have you ever tried doing this or doing this? He wants to argue with me. And he's hitting 210. And the David DeLucci's and Sean Casey's and these guys, they did everything I said, and they didn't even need to. But you who need me and need other coaches, don't listen. So that's the day and age, the players of being coachable. And when a coach gets on you and when I challenge you, it's not criticism, it's called coaching. Like today as a player, when you get on some of the guys, like they have never been coached before. No one's ever gotten on them. They've never been held accountable. They think all you do is criticize. Every time you say something to me, you're criticized. But no, I'm not. I'm coaching you. I have a high standard. So you need to be coachable. But that's the biggest thing I don't see from some of the players. Kids in our program were pretty lucky. And when I recruited them and they saw how insane I was and saw how crazy it was going to be, they still don't get it until they're really into it, even though I try to warn them. But my kids are amazing in the program, and they came for a reason. And we have some tough first semesters with them who they don't understand things. I've had some of my best relationships with players who's the first semester, all you did was yell at me and everything I did was wrong. And it's like, well, you only remembered that, but you did a lot of things wrong. And look how amazing person you are. And that's what keeps me with my confidence that I need to do that, because they don't know what they don't know. They need to be coached like that by me. And that's the only way I know. So, but being coachable, And that was the characteristics: competitive, coachable. And I'm telling you, almost to a T, they were great people. Man, I'm
Mm.
just telling you, the way life works, they were great teammates. They were great sons. They were so coachable. They cared about their team. The pro game is a rat race to be a pro, but it makes it so much easier when you care about winning and care about other teammates, that it helps you climb the mountain. And so many of the great players that I had, that when I look back at them, like, they were amazing people. So very few were, I don't even have one that I go, what a bad guy, and he ended up playing the big leagues. It's like, nope. Now you will see some of them like, yeah, he wasn't as good a kid as that other kid, and it catches up to them that their careers are a lot shorter. But like when I talk about the Mike Trouts and Aaron Boone's and those guys, it was like they were better people than players. And you see them strive to have success, and they're the same guys, because you don't, a leopard doesn't change its stripes, man. You don't, you you don't change. It's hard. You evolve, you do certain things, but great people or good people become great people. Average people can become good people. Great people never become bad people. You know what I mean? It's like, so
Hmm.
that's so important to why they become who they are, and why managers want to be part of them. And the pro players, I try to teach them how important their work ethic was, and that, like, you're on an interview with every coach, manager you ever meet, and when they're trying to win, the ultimate goal in the big leagues is to win. And your first spring training, when you meet Joe Torre, Joe Girardi, Mike Scioscia, they're trying to see what kind of person you are, and who are they going to hook their wagon with. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like, can I trust this guy? And I've got so many stories on what managers wanted, and what Mike Scioscia wanted from his players is, can I win with him? Can I trust with him? Is he accountable? And that meant so many things. Is he going to miss signs? Is he ever going to be late? Does he know where to go on a first to third? Does he know where the relays? Like, when I tell him something, will he do it right the next time? You know what I mean? There's so much involved in that, and that's what the coaching is. And that's like when a guy does something wrong and I get on him, he thinks I'm criticizing, when no, I'm not I'm teaching you, I'm coaching you.
Hmm.
My style might is a little rough at first for you, and you begin to appreciate it, and you sort of learn that, hey, if you don't want me yelling at you, then do it right. You know what I mean? If you really want to boil things down, if you don't want me yelling at you, do it right. And it really is
Absolutely.
that simple. And the standards that are set and the accountability is so high that I'm not going to accept anything but perfection. And I expect that from me. And I'm the guy that makes more mistakes than anybody. But yet I try to rectify it when I make a mistake, and don't make the same mistakes, and treat him better. Like, you can't do that. So that's like, I want to be the perfect coach. The funniest thing is I'm the farthest thing from being a perfect coach that there is. But the craziest thing is I want to be the perfect coach,
Hmm.
because I want perfection, and I want that from you as a player. You're never going to be perfect, but why can't we strive to? And guess what? If you don't become the perfect player and it's just great, that's going to be pretty darn good. And if I
Absolutely.
if I don't become a perfect coach and I can become just a good coach, then that's going to be pretty darn good for me. So,
Absolutely. What a great answer right there. And one thing that I want to get to with you is, like, over your 30 years that you've seen the game change. How have you been able to remember who you are and why you do it, and just go into the importance of remembering that?
so yeah, that's a great question, and I that's an important thing for me. And respect factor, and there's so many great people in this game, and I think it's so important that the old school respects the new school, and I think
Hmm.
it's important that the new school respects the old school, and you got to try to find an in between. And I owe it to our players today to stay up with the analytics, to evolve and understand the launch angle, the exit below, and all these other things, because they are a weapon, but they're not the end all. And what I see is too many closed minds. We have too many people now that are involved in the game. And I don't care if you were a great player or even if you played, but you need to respect the process of how players became. You only see the end all. And, well, in order to hit a home run, you need to be from 13 to 22 and the exit velocity 100. So let's start manipulating your swing so that you become that.
Hmm.
You only know the end all. You don't know what Mike Trout looked like as a 17, 18, and 19-year-old, how he became who he's become. A lot of guys don't respect the process. Like when you see A-Rod talk about hitting, and he's talking about staying down through the baseball and what he did, and we have some of the new school guys that want to scoff at him. You don't know what you're doing. What in the world do you know, A-Rod? What does he know? I mean, the guy was one of the greatest players of all time, one of the most articulate players, and he was a student of the game. So when you hear those players, like, and you're scoffing at them, like, seriously? Now, that's not even what you did, but it was the process and how he did it. Of course, nobody swung down through the ball. You can't go down through a ball to hit it out of the park, but it was part of his thought process and what he did. So you need to have some understandings of the processes and quit worrying about the end result. Worry about how a hitter thinks and how he gets to the process. And an old school guy there's merit to it. You have a guy that hits nothing, but he's a great hitter. He has great exit velocity, but he doesn't hit many home runs. So we have the instruments now to tell you, well, yeah, his launch angle is only this, and that. So you can help get that a little better without even letting him know. And the launch angle isn't manipulated early in the swing. It's, hey, make an adjustment out in front, get through the baseball. So that's where you start getting to the baseball. I just am really crushed today. And I'm not even a Twitter guy, but I get so many people that send things to me, and I am trying to always evolve and pay attention. And what's the saying, FOMO, failure of missing out? So like, I do try to pay attention. Am I missing out? This hitting guy's teaching the strangest things I've ever seen. Am I missing out? Like, should I be doing this? So as ridiculous as it is, I do pay a little bit of attention to it. And then I get back to my roots and why guys were who they are. And if you watch any really good hitter talk about his routines, his tee work, how he goes about it, not one guy gets in there and says, yeah, I get off the tee and my launch angle is this, and I hit the ball on the top of the net as much as I can. Yet there are hitting coaches that are teaching that. There's actually professional hitting coaches that are teaching some high finishes and getting through the baseball and what they believe. And the truth is like, buddy, you haven't had lots of great hitters. You haven't had hitting as a staffs as a whole you're doing lots of lessons in cages when cages aren't, it's about being on the field and the psyche of a hitter and how you handle different pitches. And there is some merit to what you're teaching, but you're so off balance to worry about those things so much. And to think that you're going to teach a 10-year-old that not having barrel control or hitting the ball on the ground is don't hit the ball on the ground. That's insane. You're trying to get through baseballs and hit balls on the line. Younger hitters aren't even strong enough. Some younger hitters best bolt in the air with a perfect launch angle can't go over anybody's head. So you've got to be able to handle the barrel, use the field, handle more pitches, focus on line drives, hitting through baseballs, and good things will happen. But like, the best hitters are complete. They're not one-dimensional. So there's so much involved in it. So you've got to keep old school principles because I've been around those great hitters. So I can't lose my roots and how they did it, but I need to want my guys to become even better. So there's things I did with those guys that we would change a little bit, but not a ton because I know the process. I know how we went about it. And the analytics guys that haven't really paid attention and really talked to those successful hitters, they only know what they did. But if you look at the Mookie Betts and Mike Trouts and Freemans and all the great ones, they use the field. They can hit with two. They hit with different, you know what I mean? Like they're complete hitters. Absolutely. You can't be a one-dimensional guy. To believe that striking out 200 times in a season or striking out a lot helps you win games as long as you do hit 40 home runs or hit a lot of home runs, that's a bunch of baloney because you have to be able to get a runner in from third base with 2 outs. Amen. You've got to be able to move a runner. And really, we get to see that the Dodgers are the most complete team in baseball. The Red Sox, when they won the World Series a couple of years ago, were complete. They're hitting with runners on second base and 2 outs and 2-strike hitting, and all the 2-strike hits the Red Sox and Dodgers got were like the numbers were mind-boggling. And the analytics really only tell you, well, if you do this on the course of 162 games, this is what happens. But when if you're really trying to win games, it's a one game at a time, one at bat at a time, one inning at a time, one pitch at a time, winning the game. Well, it's okay, he struck out 4 times a day, because at the end of the year, if he keeps doing this, he'll end up hitting the home run. Great, but if he did put the ball in play twice, we'd have won the game. You know what I mean? And everybody looks at the end results on the data at the end of the year as opposed to the at-bat data. I mean, we all it's so neat to watch the World Series, and now every run's important and every play is important, and they break it down. And like in college baseball, and what I believe, that's what we're doing every single day. Every game for us is the World Series. You hear a lot of people talk about, boy, I like professional baseball, the 60-game season, everything counted and everything was important. Yeah, it really was. But I believe you can do that in 162 games. There is the energy factor, and they play so much, but you can still focus and play a style of baseball that tries to win every single game. And I can't wait for that one baseball team to be out there in the major leagues that goes back to, you know what, by the way, like putting balls in play and hitting homers is going to be great, and we're going to be a complete team. And it's really what you see the Dodgers when they're at their best. The contact play by Mookie Betts, one of the most biggest staples in our offense is the contact play, and they win a World Series because of what Mookie Betts does twice and scores on balls to the infield with the infield in, where most teams and programs wouldn't even send their guy with less than 2 outs from third with the infield in. And that's another subject for another day that I'm passionate about, which is a part of our offense. But it was so great to see it, and people still are confused on it. And I get calls from people. I got a lot of calls from coaches like, that's the contact play that you're talking about, and selling out. And if it had been a line drive, you're actually doubled up, So that's the intricacies and that I believe can be done in professional baseball. And you could attack every game, but there's an energy standpoint, and I get all that. And so you've got to, there's a fine line between that. But that's what's so neat about baseball and the way the college game is done, and the new age and the old age. And I believe in a few years it's going to be back a little bit to, putting the ball in play is important, and there's value for the baseball player. I'm a little nervous now that the value of a real baseball player isn't valued as much anymore. That there's not a place for the guy that can really play the game. Although there are enough examples of David Fletcher of the Angels and some guys, if you watch him like I do every night watching the Angels, to see the way he plays the game, but there's not many of them. But boy, when you have one, it sure is appreciated. So I hope it goes back to the defensive skills, and it's not just the exit velocity. And hey, he doesn't over 95 exit velocity, he can't play. Like, man, there's a place for them, but yet the job is to train your hitters to improve their exit velocity and the strength training. There's all a part of it. So it's all super, super important. But so my job is to stick up with the times, pay attention to all the data, and give them the opportunity to become the best player they possibly can without losing my core beliefs, and know what actually really, really works and what makes players players.
Absolutely. Beautifully said right there. And Coach, one last question for you today. This is awesome. Give some advice to those young coaches or just people that are leading young men, young women that, we run into each other and we got 2 to 3 minutes. What's the most important advice you could give somebody?
Love each other. Love your players. It's not how much you really know as a coach. It's how much love you have for them. And see, to me, love is making someone accountable, disciplining them, making them be selfless. You know what I mean? Like incorporating that stuff to what's the most important about being on a team is the selflessness and love for each other, playing for each other, and winning, competing, the discipline it takes. Like that's like when you love someone, you don't want them to fall short. You want them to have great experiences. Winning, I talk about winning so much, and it's not the end all, but it's an important thing of everything. If you try to win every day as a person and win every meal with your kids and love them to death, you'll become a better parent and better coach. But like share things with other coaches. I've had so many coaches share things with me to help me become like I talk to coaches all the time. I try to, everything I possibly have, I give to others. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not that smart, but like,
Hmm.
here's what I've learned. If I can help you a little bit, great. The other things that you think, I got a better way. Great. If you got a better way, help me with it, man. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So it's continue to grow, but like coaches, love your players, teach them to be great men, compete, discipline. And there is a scoreboard. It's not the end all, but like you are playing to win. There's no win at all costs. It's playing to win. And when
Hmm.
you become a better person, player, teammate, situational player, you'll win more games. So that's I just think coaches
Wow.
love them, get in for the right play, love them, be there for them, have empathy, be there for the great player, be there for the worst player. There's a role for all of them, and there's so much involved, and they can learn so much. And that's why all of us coach. I mean, Jake, you know this better than anybody. Like we want to make an impact on people. Um, I mean, we want to make an impact, and to me, it's like you want to leave a legacy, because, like I said, I've coached millions of players, and a lot of them have some stories that I'm not real proud of, and they're telling them every second they get. You know what I mean? And I can't.
Hmm.
Yeah, you're right. And so that's my thing. What's my legacy as a coach? Not how many games I won. What's my legacy as a coach and a person? And most important, what kind of father and husband was I? And that's going to be on full display for my players every day. And it's not always perfect.
Hmm. Wow. Coach, we've had several people on here, but I can tell you, you're probably the first one to really open up. And I appreciate that, the way you've opened up with us today. You can tell you serve your players, and that's awesome. That's a true statement to you and who you are. And it goes on to show with the things y'all are doing at TCU, because y'all are one of the most exciting teams in the country to watch. But Coach, I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on here and spending this time with us. This has been awesome. I'm fired up to just roll it back and listen to it again. But Coach, I appreciate you taking off with us today.
Jake, thank you, buddy. And thank you what you do with your podcast. You're really helping a lot of people. Thanks so
Thanks,
much.
Coach.